The Long Dark is a very special video game for a few reasons. First, it is an indie game that is almost a decade old and is still being updated to this day with new content. Second is its unique take on a classic genre, the end of the world as we know it. While many games with apocalyptic themes stick to the cliché zombie plague or nuclear war, The Long Dark's quiet apocalypse is triggered by something that happens on Earth on a regular basis, the solar flare. But before I discuss the events of the game, I want to talk about the history behind the game and the information that is hidden away for you to find in your adventures across Great Bear Island. Welcome to Game Tales, a series about video game storytelling through the use of history, lore, and the stories of not just the game, but the universe it exists in. I originally intended for the history of The Long Dark to be one video, but decided that breaking it down into 3 videos would be a better idea. Over the course of those 3 videos, I will build the timeline of events as precisely as possible. Some events don't have exact years, so they will be placed relative to where they occur based on what we know. Because there will be some speculation for certain events in these videos, you will see this symbol on the bottom left of the screen to signify that speculation. For those of you that are watching this and are preparing to play Signal Void, the new narrative tale released today as part of the expansion, I will make a video on it in the coming days, as well as a proper episode of this show on that content in a few weeks. Also, any gameplay you see on screen throughout this video is mostly irrelevant to what I will be talking about. There is a lot to discuss before I get to the new content. For this episode, I will be discussing the history of Great Bear Island, the setting for The Long Dark before the events known as the Collapse. Before I continue, I want to remind you to please do the tasks listed on screen. They will greatly benefit the channel, and I will love you beyond measure if you do. Doing them will help this video reach more people and help me know that you enjoyed it. Great Bear Island is a fictional place in the far north of mainland Canada, featuring many points of interest from tall mountains to harsh river valleys. The earliest point in the island's history I could find was the founding of Milton in 1911. Milton was a mining town in the Mountain Town region, built on a supply route between Port Mary and the interior mountains. In the 1960s, Milton had a paved road built through it, solidifying its importance for the island's economy. On another part of the island, Thompson's Crossing was founded in 1919 in Pleasant Valley. The town housed the local farmers and miners that would develop the valley. Despite its long history with industry, the valley would one day become an easy target of environmental activism that would shape the community and the region as a whole. Seismic activity would also play a role in the valley's decline. Another notable location, the first location explored in the game, was Mystery Lake. This almost inaccessible region was only possible to visit via hiking trails. In the 1930s, a railroad was built through the region, splitting it down the middle. The region featured a notable industrial project known as the Carter Dam. The dam, built on the Carter River, was run by the industrial magnate Richard Carter in the 1960s. Its purpose was to power a local mining town, which I believe was Milton, but I could never confirm that. The falling prices of coal and copper in the late 1960s caused the project to be almost completely abandoned. Seismic activity also played a role in the fate of the dam. The complete opposite in terms of purpose is the Black Rock Penitentiary. Built from steel and bricks brought in from the mainland, stone from the nearby mountain, and with the labor of the local miners, its purpose would be to house some of the worst prisoners Canada had to offer. The only notable way to time the construction is a note left behind stating that the cook that knew the first warden of the prison had done the same during the war, cooking. This is most likely referencing World War II, leaving the construction to sometime after the war and before the 1950s. All across Great Bear Island, a vast economy would blossom, from the lumber industry, fishing and whaling, farming, food canning, and most importantly, mining. The 1980s saw an economic boom for the town of Milton, having its peak population of 1,000. It's hard to believe that, having walked through Milton in-game, but it's possible that the in-game representation does not match the lore-accurate description for gameplay reasons. In the late 1980s, tragedy would strike Milton, as the Great Bear Highway was completed. This caused traffic to bypass the town, causing it to decline economically and demographically. By the time of the collapse, Milton was down to about 100 people. In the same decade, Carter Dam was revived in order to be modernized, but hydrological changes to the Mystery Lake region prevented any progress. These hydrological changes were most likely caused by the seismic activity. Public interest in turning Mystery Lake into a park started to rise, eventually causing the dam to be permanently closed in the 1990s. There are moments in the history of Great Bear Island that have no time frame reference. One such moment, or more accurately, movement, was the rise of the forest stalkers. While they set their eyes on Pleasant Valley first, their cause would shake the island at its core over time. I will talk about them more in a later video. There are also places that are mentioned but not represented in-game. Port Mary, which connects to the interior mountains through Milton, is a notable one. Depending on where the interior mountains are, it's hard to tell where Port Mary fits on the map. Considering the Great Bear Highway runs from Desolation Point through Coastal Highway to Bleak Inlet, it's even harder to pinpoint Port Mary's location. It is very clear that the early history of Great Bear Island saw the island grow both in terms of population and economic importance to Canada. Coal was most likely a key resource for keeping furnaces running and keeping northern Canadians warm through the harsh winters. Despite the island being so remote, having a tough climate, and most likely a high infrastructural maintenance cost, it proved to be essential enough to get highways, radio towers, and large mountain towns that many people called home. The history of the Long Dark does extend to the entire world, and that history will bring a fall that Great Bear Island has never seen. But that is a story for the next episode of Game Tales, The Long Dark, the story of the quiet apocalypse. In the next episode, I will be discussing the defining moment in the history of the Long Dark. The event known as the collapse will change everything. For now, I want to remind you to please do the tasks listed on screen. They will greatly benefit the channel, and I will love you beyond measure if you do. Doing them will help this video reach more people and help me know that you enjoyed it. I'm open to critique as this is my very first video of this kind, so please let me know in the comments where I can improve. I will be waiting for you in episode 2.